Welcome to our community. Susie Thomas with you this morning. Always a pleasure to welcome John Stallings. He is from Hope House, and we're going to say in the Freedom Houses as well. And good morning.
Good morning.
Well, first of all, some people might not be familiar with Hope House and the ministry that it does. Tell us a little bit about how it got started and what you do.
Hope House started 9 years ago, and the official name is Hope House for Women of Stark County. And part of it came from ministry dream of Pastor Cindy Bishop, who at the time rededicated her life to the Lord and was involved in lives of women, but God started giving her a call to reach out to the women that are living on the margins of society and to try to help them to get their lives turned around. And to, she saw the needs that were out there, and this really this was kind of a forerunner with all the issues that are battling with people nowadays with the opioids and the women, all that type of thing. And so God put it on her heart, and we started praying about the ministry. And she says, we need to find a place. And basically, God put the Hope House on her heart, and she drove around. She drove up in front of this house that is in Stark County, and when she did, God said, "That's the house for her." And so we met with the realtor. The house was for sale. We went in to meet with them and wanted to follow, the process. That afternoon, Pastor Cindy and I were together, and the realtor called us back and said that they've already sold the house, so you're going to have to find somewhere else. Pastor Cindy I told her that, and we were getting on the elevator at Massillon Hospital, and she said when the door closed, they're going to cancel. Literally went down to the bottom. The doors open, and the realtor called back and says they canceled. Where they don't want
within the span of one elevator ride.
Yes.
Because if God said this is the house, He wasn't mistaken.
And it happened 3 more times before we could raise the money with it. And then when we did, we were able to get it, and that was the starting part of the ministry of helping the women with a place where they could come in and get help, counseling, food. Give a place to bathe their kids.
Do women live there? Are they living there?
The initial house that we started with was not that. But as we were helping the women, they were going right back out to the income and environment that they were at. And so we just started seeing and realizing that there was a need over it, and we started praying about it. And God had someone donate a house for us.
Wow.
And it was, so we got this house fixed up, and the women started having a place to stay so we could help. And so that started the next phase of it. Turned out the house that was next door, because these women that were living there, they were very streetwise, and they realized that, there's activity going on next door, and started sharing Pastor Cindy, this is what they're doing. They're it's a drug house. And turned out we started praying over it, mostly Pastor Cindy, and all of a sudden 2 weeks later, the house is vacant and there's nobody in there.
That's amazing.
And the lady that owned the house had been trying to get these people out of there for 3 years, and she was afraid and could not force them out. But the power of God, they up and left it. And she was so impressed that she sold us the house on a land contract, and we were able to go in and become Hope House, the Hope Home, we call them, the Hope Home number 2. And from that, the women we started doubled our size.
Oh my goodness.
But we, in time and things were working out, but there were some real spirits that the women were seeing, and just things were happening. and just all kind of weird things within the house. And I gathered a group of pastors from all across Stark County, and we came over and went room to room, all the corners of the house, prayed over the house, anointed it with oil, and just prayed.
Did a good cleaning.
And got it a good spiritual cleaning. And so we were pumped and excited about that. And as we were leaving, going out the front door, the Spirit said, go over there. We need to, and ask God for that house on the other side of the first house.
Really?
And within a month, the owners of that house donated that house to us. So we went from no homes for the ladies to live on to where we have 3 of them.
3
and
homes.
Then God expanded. We had a 4th house, and we're buying 2 more on land contract. So right now we have 6 homes all together.
That's
and
amazing.
God has just done some amazing things out of a little dream that Pastor Cindy came up with that just taken root. And
the wonderful news is that you've got places for these women. The sad news is that you need them.
yes.
What's the difference between Hope House and Freedom House? How do you move from one to the other?
Well, we started out when we first started, you moved into Hope House number 1 was the initial house where you got in and got grounded, and there's lots of controls of the women because they're just coming into the home, and they have to be living, it's sober living, and so we're cutting off a lot of their connections with the people that were on the street. And then once they get established, then they can move to Hope Home number 2. And then after that, they can move into Hope Home number 3. But what we were seeing was that
kind of a step-down progression.
Right, but we were seeing after that, because there are so many other needs of ladies wanting to come in, that they could stay for so long, and then they would have to move on and find a place. And what we were discovering is some of these women that now had to go back into the locations that where they were at, and then they're gotten back involved and started the whole process over. And so we, that's part of where we started praying, and we started with the Freedom Houses. So you start out with Hope House, and in the hope you can get your life turned around, and then once you get your life turned around, you've got that hope. Then the freedom part of it, they still have the accountability. They're still drug testing and that type of thing. We work with the jail system or through the court system in Stark County with the Chance program, and some of our women are getting through there, and so they help us with some of it. Funding-wise, it's all donations. We do not get any government funding from it, but God has provided, and needs have come, and people have just come together to help the ministry, and it's pretty awesome what God is doing. But anyway, they can stay in long-term freedom houses and get their family back.
That was my very next question. Are these women with their children, or are their children placed somewhere else while they're with you?
Women, at first we tried to do it with women that had children, but it was just not a good situation, and it was not the way the God was leading. And so most of the ones we have have either been court ordered taking their children away, or family members have taken them.
But you have good news, because as women progress through the program, they are being able to be reunited with their children and with their families.
Yes, and that's part of what's exciting about with the Freedom Home, is that they're able to get in and start working on getting their children back. They've been sober for a long enough time. The court starts to recognize that, and just want to give a kind of an acknowledgement. I was thinking about one of our ladies that I just saw today, that originally when she came to us, she came out of prison. She had been and had struggled with life, had been a very successful manager of 2 or 3 restaurants in town, that if I mention the name, she was the manager of them, and got so wrapped up with alcohol and it destroyed her life. And she went away for prison, but when she came back, and then she came into the Hope Home, and she came through Hope Home number 1, and then she went to the Hope Home number 2, and then number 3, and then she was part of the ones where we were starting out with the Freedom House. And as she got stronger, then it worked out. She was able to she got one child returned to her, and then another child returned to her, and now she has all 4 of her children back.
Oh,
and
that's
there was a man that was in her life, and she says, I can't be having a man in my life that's not of the Lord. And they got married, and she's involved in ministry, and she's enrolled in a theological program, and is working on getting her master's in ministry, and where she's going to go back out into helping the women and giving back to that. And she ultimate goal, she wants to get her doctorate in it, and just, but it all started because we had the belief, that little bit of hope.
Yes.
And kind of have a saying at our church where I pastor out at Shepherd's Hill in Louisville is that, God has called us to love people, and with that, through the love, then they can have hope, and then they can have a mission for their life. And
it's wonderful to have a place where women can come that there's not judgment on them. It's just on their choices, that they know they're not happy with where they are either. They want to do things differently. I can't imagine, though, John, as I'm listening to you talk, how difficult it must be for a woman to be able to completely change her support system. Because, of course, when you leave then Hope House, the natural progression would be to go back to where you used to live, go back to where you used to work, go back to your old friends, and then you're back in your old cycle again. How hard is it for them to completely change that?
Yes, it is definitely a challenge in that, and that's part of what we've had. And one of the things that Pastor Cindy has been so good at, and with and it's just not herself, but it's really a group of people that have come along beside us. It's many churches. It's with it, and part of what Pastor Cindy has done is built these relationships and helped them to understand the power of God and how God is, can help them and be with them. And we don't have a complete success rate. We have some that come in, stay for a while, then they, make wrong choices, go back out.
Your story's not over yet.
But what is so awesome is that Pastor Cindy builds these relationships with these girls, and they still can come back and or call her and let her know, and when they're in trouble or when they just need help or they need some positive thing, it's even though they weren't successful working their way through into sober living, they still have the understand the hope of Jesus Christ and can believe that the church community loves them and cares for them.
Yes, that there's still a place that they can go, and their story's not over yet. Maybe they just need to try again, but God's all about second chances, third chances, fourth chances. What are your needs?
That is so true with that. We're talking about, we have one person that came through our program. She was one of the first that came through it, and yes, she flunked out about 3 different times, and just hearing some of her story of what God did in her life, and she would share, and part of it, she was an older woman, and she'd been involved in prostitution and drugs so much, and she really became, we kind of called her our favorite mother hooker. Because she was a mother to so many of the women that were out on the street, and they really educated Pastor Cindy about it. And but now today she's got a job, she's got her life. She's it took 3 or 4 times messing up and to get it together, but she is just doing great. And she was in church the other day and just sharing what God had done, and brought a grandchild with her, and so it's just really cool what God's doing.
Boy, and sometimes isn't that the person who can really be used then to help somebody else get off the street, to be able to say, and they would never know it by looking at her, but to be able to say, I was right where you are, and now I'm not.
That's right.
That God did this for me, He can do it for you too. We need to take a short break. We've got another amazing story after these words. You're listening to Our Community.